So we started speaking last week about the lady with the issue of blood, the woman with the issue of blood who went to Jesus. And we're going to continue with that. And we've got a series inside a series because I'm going to speak to you this morning on a subject that I've titled The Creative Power of Your Words. So we're going to start that this week and we'll finish it off next week. Mark chapter 5. And we're going to start reading from verse 25. Now, a certain woman had a flow of blood for 12 years and had suffered many things from many physicians. She had spent all that she had, was no better, but rather grew worse. When she heard about Jesus, she came behind him in the crowd and touched his garment. For she said, "If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made well." For she said, "If only I may touch his clothes, I shall be made whole." What took her to the place that she has such conviction about her actions that she was able to say, if I do this, I know what the result will be. If I act or behave in this way, I know what the implications will be, and I know what I'm going to get as a result of it. Because her actions were based on a confidence. She put herself in a position that was compromised within society to achieve something that she knew would only be achieved through the actions that she did. And before she touched him, she says, if I can touch him, I will be made whole. The power of words. The power of words. Why are words so important? Words are so fundamental to who we are as human beings. Do you know that as a species, what makes us so complex is the whole aspect, or one of the things, is the whole aspect of language. As human beings, our languaging makes us a species that is unusual. We have the ability to be able to effectively communicate between ourselves. We have the ability to use something called words to convey ideas, to communicate thoughts, to express feelings, to get people to a place where they have an understanding and they have an appreciation of who I am. There is a creative power to our words that can either be productive or destructive. People go through life, even as adults, carrying with them the baggage of words that have been spoken over them. People carry with them the baggage of words that were deposited into their lives when they were young, where people told them what they couldn't be, when people told them about their limitations, where people told them about their inadequacies, and they carry with them to this day the baggage of words. We can also use words as a powerful tool to affirm people. When we recognize what God is doing in people, we use words to effectively nurture and to fertilize those words, those actions, where we can build up people. Words are powerful. I remember when we were younger and our kids were younger, but our kids acted on our words. When our kids couldn't walk yet, and they were kind of holding on to everything, and you could stand a little way from them and you could say, "Come." And they would look at you, and they knew their vulnerability, and they knew their inadequacies, and yet because they had such confidence in you and what you had said to them, that they acted on what you said. And they walked towards you. And they wobbled, and they did whatever. And even at the potential of falling and hurting themselves, they acted on what you said because they trusted you. Words are so important in our lives. And maybe it's because words mirror in the natural realm how vital they are in a spiritual context. Because in the economy of God, words play a vital part in the way that He has designed things to operate. And if we can understand that, we can put ourselves in a place where we position ourselves for success. God has done what He needs to do for us to be successful. What we need to do is we need to find out, be able to define our part and step into that. What I want to speak to you about today is an encouragement, no matter where you are, I know people have got very real difficulties in their lives. I know that some people have got some challenges that are significant, and they're not trivial things. And I don't mean to trivialize any of that stuff by what I have to say. I recognize that. But my encouragement to you is this, that there are certain principles on which we can base our lives. And if we begin to operate off of those principles, it brings about change. And sometimes what we do is when we're going through rough times, when we go through rough challenges, we can be at a place where we're looking for people to affirm us. We're looking for people to acknowledge the difficulty that we have. And that's okay. But at the same time, we have to leave ourselves open to the place where they can put truth in, because truth is going to take you from where you are to where you can be. So she was a woman who was in a dire situation. She was in a woman who was in a situation where she had an issue of blood, and she had been to every doctor and every professional and every physician to have it taken care of. And all of them said, there's nothing we can do for you. We can't help you. There's nothing more we can do. She had spent everything that she had trying to find someone who could give her something to remedy her situation. She did everything that she could to try and fix a situation that in the natural seemed hopeless. You may be in a situation today where the situation that you're in seems hopeless. But I want you to know something. It's not without hope. The important thing is for us to always recognize that when we're in relationship with God, God always has an answer. God always has what it takes to take us from where we are to victory, to fullness, to health, to a place of completeness in Him, a place of wholeness. That is His design. When we read about the Bible, when we listen to the way people speak, there is an acknowledgement on the part of people who are Christians, and funnily enough, even people who are not Christians, about the fact that there is a God, there is a being out there who has created all of this stuff. And as a result of them being the designer and the creator of everything, they carry within them the potential and the power to make change. And because they can bring about change, I can recognize hope. People who aren't even Christians will sit and say in dire situations, we're just praying that God does something here. They know nothing about God. They know nothing about His character or who He is, other than the fact that if there's anyone who can help in this situation, it's God. When we come into a relationship with God, we begin to get an understanding of who He is and what He's all about. And we start to formulate within our mind an understanding, and we get a picture of who He is. And what it begins to do within us is it begins to create an understanding that God is a God of hope. He will build hope into your situation. The challenge is that most Christians live in hope and never progress onto faith. You see, in the equation of hope and faith, hope is a good thing. It's always good to know that there is an answer. It's always good to know that there is an opportunity of escape from where you are, and that is helpful. But the thing about it is, we need to get on the road where we can begin to experience those things. As long as you're a person who's sitting living in hope, and that's unfortunately where most Christians are, we don't recognize the fact that God is taking us on a journey. God doesn't position us at a place called a destination. What He's saying is, first of all, I want you to recognize that I am the author and the finisher. I want you to recognize the fact that I've created potential for you to step into the fullness of what I have available to you. But secondly, then I want you to recognize that there is a role for you to play in this. And I want you to step into something called faith. And faith is going to take you from a place of hope, where everything is dependent on Him, to a place of faith where responsibilities are shared between what He is going to do and what I'm going to do. And I recognize roles and responsibilities. And as I take that on, I'm going to move into the valley of patience. Because somewhere between what He's given me in faith and the final outcome, there's that little valley of patience. How big that valley is and how broad that valley is going to be up to you, which we'll get to. But We walk through a place because he wants to take us to a place of fullness and fulfillment. As long as you're a Christian who's living in hope, you're an SOS Christian. Save my soul. We're an SOS Christian because we recognize that God can do things. God can heal me. God can save me. God can deliver me. God can provide for me. God can do everything that I need. So God, do it. Send me a lifeline. And I'm waiting for God to throw me a lifeline. And I'm hanging on for the lifeline. And I'm pleading for the lifeline. And I'm praying for the lifeline. The problem with people who are Christians who find themselves in a state of hope is that we disempower ourselves. We don't recognize the fact that we have a role to play in the context of what God is doing. And so what we're doing is we put all the responsibility on him and we say, God, it's up to you to deliver me. And I'm sitting here, an open vessel waiting for deliverance. God isn't going to deliver you. God isn't going to come and pull you out of that. I shouldn't say that. He may do it as a result of his mercy, but that's not his design for living. His design for living is that we enter into a place and a lifestyle called grace. That's his design for us. As Christians, what we do is we acknowledge possibilities without having hard realities. We acknowledge God can do something. We acknowledge that God is the one who is the creator. We acknowledge that he's the one who could redeem me, who could save me. He's the one who can provide. We acknowledge all of those things. And it's something that could happen in the future. But I don't have a hard reality about the fact that that's something that I can have right now. And the problem with it is, as long as I'm living in the potential of what could happen, I'm living in hope. When I live in the reality of a hard conviction that this is what he has provided for me, I step from a place of hope into a relationship of faith. Do you know what separates hope from faith? I know you all know, so don't shout it out at once. God said to Abraham, God said to Abraham, God said to Abraham, God said to Abraham, I will make you a father of many nations. What separates hope from faith is a personal promise. That's what separates hope from faith. You see, Abraham probably sat and he knew about God. And he knew that God was good. And God wanted to do good things for him. And God could take him places. And God was the one who would look out for him. And he could live in a knowledge about the general goodness of God. But what changed Abraham was when God met with him, spoke to him, and gave him a promise. Because when he gave Abraham a promise, Abraham suddenly had something that God had spoken to him. Abraham had something that was his. All of a sudden, Abraham had a promise that God had spoken to him, and he could hold on to that promise. And it didn't matter what happened out there. It didn't matter about the fact that my wife was about 160 years old. It didn't matter about the fact that she'd never have kids. It didn't matter about the fact that Viagra hadn't been invented. None of that stuff mattered anymore. It was immaterial because the natural things were inconsequential when it came to the fact that God had given me a promise. Why did he have that conviction? How is it that he came to a place where he was so consumed with the promise that God had given him that everything else became immaterial in the context of his life? You see, when you get a word from God, it makes future possibilities current realities. Yeah. When you get a word from God, it makes future possibilities current realities. My kids love Sweet Frog. They like going to Sweet Frog. If you want to go to Sweet Frog, you better have deep wallets because it's not inexpensive. but they love Sweet Frog. And they get to Sweet Frog, and they get these cups out, and then they start going down. And then it's like a little bit of cotton candy, and a little bit of vanilla, and a little bit of chocolate, and a little bit of... And Vivian is about the size of this thing here, and she gets to the end, and she holds it, and the ice cream is like this. But she feels good, because it says that it's fat-free. So it's fat-free. But where they trick you is... you get past the fat-free stage to this buffet of calories. They've got marshmallows, and they've got pieces of dark chocolate and light chocolate and white chocolate and little pieces of chocolate and big pieces of chocolate and shavings of chocolate. And they've got whipped cream, and they've got cherries, and they've got sprinkles, and they've got candies, and they've got sour worms, and they've got sour frogs. You name it. And by the time you finished, you thought that the little thing of ice cream couldn't get any higher, and it's about this big now. And then when they get to the end, they're going to sit down and eat it. And my kids have about 4 bites, and they go, I'm full. My kids know that I love them. My kids know that I want the best for them. And my kids know that I love it when they go out and they have a good time and they enjoy themselves. They know that I even like giving them ice cream. Not only that, but they know that I like them having Sweet Frog. They acknowledge the possibility that I could have Sweet Frog in the future, because there is a general awareness of that. They acknowledge it. But if you were to say to them, are you having Sweet Frog this weekend? I don't know. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. We could be. We do like Sweet Frog, but I don't know whether we will be. Why? Because they have an awareness and a general acknowledgement of potential, of possibility, what could happen. But you know what changes the whole equation? When Dad says, you know what, on Friday after dinner, I'll tell you what we're doing. We're going to Sweet Frog. And they go, wow, Sweet Frog. We love Sweet Frog. And so you know what that means? Tonight, when I go and tuck them into bed, they say, Dad, how many sleeps until Friday? And tomorrow, they say, now what kind of flavors do you think they'll have on Friday? Because you said we're going to Sweet Frog. And then on Thursday, they'll be saying, do you realize tomorrow's Friday? Tomorrow's the big day. Because you said to us that we're going to Sweet Frog on Friday. And you may be at the office, and you get stuck in a meeting, and you get stuck there late, and it adjusts the whole time frame. But it doesn't matter, because Dad told me we're going to Sweet Frog. And you're driving home, and you've got bumpers on 29 who don't know how to drive, and they drive next to one another at 8 miles an hour the whole way. And so you get home late. Doesn't matter. Dad told me we're going to Sweet Frog. I don't have any money. I don't even have a wallet. They don't have a driver's license. They don't have a car. They've got no way to get there. Doesn't matter. Daddy told me we're going to Sweet Frog. The difference between knowing that Dad looks out for your best and would love for you to enjoy all of those things, and Dad saying to you, I'm taking you to Sweet Frog, is enormous. You see, the Bible speaks a general message of hope. But Daddy speaks a personal message of faith. When you get into the Bible, you're going to discover all kinds of possibilities and things that could happen in your life. You're going to discover all kinds of things that could go on, and you're going to get so excited about it because they're all possibilities and things that could happen to you. But unless you engage in relationship with God, you never get a word. Unless you engage in relationship with God and you're at a place where you let Him speak into your life, you never get a word. Faith comes by and hearing the Word of God. Faith doesn't come by reading your Bible. Faith comes when you get into that intimate place of relationship with him. Faith comes when you get into that place where Daddy says, you're going to Sweet Frog on Friday. You see, when he tells you you're going to Sweet Frog, it doesn't matter about anything else. I don't care if Dad's late. I don't care if he's stuck in a meeting. It's immaterial if I don't have money. So what if I don't have a wallet? So what if I'm sick and I can't drive? So what if I have no way to get there? None of it matters. He said we're going to Sweet Frog. That's what happens when you get into intimacy with God. The problem with it is that we love the promises, we love the potential, we love looking at the fact that God wants to do something for us, but we never progress out of hope and step into faith because we don't invest in intimacy. Nobody here, of course. Because intimacy is going to cost you. Intimacy is going to take time. Intimacy is going to take investment. Intimacy may mean that you're going to have to shift some priorities around. And that the voice final is not as important as maybe spending time with God. I know Heather doesn't believe that, but everybody else does. We've always got a million excuses why we can't do things and why we can't invest in that. And then we wonder why our life with God doesn't change. It doesn't change because He's never given you a word. And so you're living in the hope and the potential and the possibility of what could happen. But I've never engaged in relationship. I've never got to that place where I've got a word from Him that I can hold on to. I never have a personal promise where He says, this is what it's about. Hold on to it. I'll get you there. God's economy doesn't work on entitlements. There is an ethos that has developed in Christian culture where we believe that if we do good things, if we behave well, if we do our best to please God, there's an inherent expectation that He owes me. We never say it that way. We wouldn't dare say it about God. But within us, there is a side that believes that. Because when it doesn't happen, what do? We turn around and say, it's not fair. What does it mean? It means I'm a good person. I've done really good things. I've tried to do the best that I can. I've tried to be a really good Christian. I don't deserve this. Somebody else does is not as good as me. That's really what it means. God didn't say the challenges won't come. He didn't say that you won't have your fair share of confrontations in life. What He said is, count it all joy. Because right now is an opportunity for the two of us to go and have a little discussion. Right now is an opportunity for me to once again say to you, let's go to Sweet Frog. That's what He's trying to do. You see, you would never realize His power in your situation. You would never realize God if you never had opportunities to take Him and to involve Him in your life. As it is, there are so many Christians who go through life with fair amounts of challenges, but there's no investment in relationship with God to even remedy it. We live in hope, believing that God will one day fix the situation. We're holding out for God. And God saying, I'm trying to give you something by my grace. And I'm trying to teach you how to receive it with your faith. One of the simplest definitions of faith is that faith is a heartfelt reality that God will change natural situations to fulfill His promise to you. A heartfelt reality that God will change natural situations to fulfill His promise to you. You see, if He's never given you a promise, the challenge that we have is that the natural situations become so strong that it's very easy for our eyes to be taken off and away from where He is and what He's about, and to focus on the reality that I have a condition that no doctor can cure, that everybody says it's impossible, that I'm going to spend my life and probably will die from this issue. I've got to get a word from God. As Christians, I think sometimes what we do is we spend more of our life trying to have perfect faith rather than recognizing his faithfulness to us. We embrace the mechanics of faith. These 3 points will take you to giant faith. There's nothing wrong with principles. I think principles are good and principles are valuable. But principles are never a substitute for issues of the heart. We used the example this morning. If you love your husband or your wife, you go and give them a good old kiss. You don't get to your wife and say, hold on a second, let me just wear my cheat sheets here. Okay, stand pretty close. Okay, then not too close so you don't run into her. Pucker up the old lips and give a quick smooch on the forehead. And a second one on the cheek if you love her. It's an issue of the heart. You can kiss somebody with passion because it's an expression of the fact that I love you. You don't need somebody to tell you how to do that. And sometimes I think what we do is we substitute intimacy with mechanics. We like to be told how to do things. We like these 4 points add up to this. Okay, and then we try to do the 4 points, but this doesn't always happen, and we don't understand why. And it's because the key ingredient is absent. And when you're talking about issues of relationship, when you're talking about issues of intimacy with God, those are very difficult things to quantify. And there's no substitute for them. You either invest in it or you don't. The principles are there and the principles are valuable, but outside of intimacy, they really mean nothing. Because you see, outside of intimacy, you're never going to get a word. So we look forward to the good Lord doing something for us. And we live in hope. And we never migrate beyond hope into faith. We never move to a place where we recognize the fact that I have responsibility, that God has done everything for me, and it's available and accessible to me. And he's sitting saying, if you'll just come into conversation and communion with me, you know what I'll do? I'll give you something that'll give you an opportunity to connect with my grace. And you can hold on to that, because what it'll do is it'll open the sluice gates for me to come into your situation and into your life. Everything that happens around you will be immaterial. It'll be inconsequential, because I've given you a promise. I've given you something that you can hold on to. It's the things that he gives us that are consequential in our heart. She had such conviction within her that she was beyond hope and she was entrenched in faith. Her heart was at a place where it was so aware of the fact that God would heal her that before she even touched him, what came out of her mouth was, if I touch him, I will be healed. If I touch him, I will be healed. She knew it. How many other people do you think were thronging around Jesus at that point? How many sick people do you think were around Jesus at that moment? If you knew that he was the healer, I would venture to say that there was a fair number. And yet no other healing is recorded except for this woman. She's the only one. We live in a place where we want God in our lives. We have an appetite for the things of God, but we don't always invest in them. It's the investment that brings intimacy. And through intimacy comes a word. And as a result of word, faith is built. And I step beyond hope into a paradigm of faith where I'm able to engage God and realize what he's made available to me.